The following material is recommended for an in-the-loop understanding as a recommended mandatory assimilating of knowledge respective to the content for the Joint Chiefs, intelligence, and other aspect areas of government. The item is effectively done in such a way where this acknowledgement, this presentation here, is to let you understand that there are limitations due to insurrection and mass rebellion and attacks from foreign and domestic parties which have limited sharing access respective to key information of high-end value that needs to be understood. We thank you for your time. Try to have a good day. CRYPTEWORLD. Well, there's a lot of ways you can look at meaning in this. If we're dealing with somebody making their world, their game world, what things are transitioning into, what it becomes, in many ways what it is now, is in order for you to set your E strings, your E designs, you have to crypt them. So you're working with the concept of your crypt or script for your E to create your world. This basically means that you're looking at language models. So if you're looking at types of language models, you have to address what it is you're going to do, how you're going to construct this. So you can deal with different forms of understanding of logic and look at the various symmetries of logic. For instance, the logic of compression, massive compression. If you take the understanding of from the Big Bang to the present, you're talking about mathematical computations that in effect are as though massive compression. So you convert this all into a massive compression understanding, and a lot of people are going to go, oh, you're crazy. Well, follow along for a little bit. I usually don't share this kind of stuff. So basically, you're going to run into an understanding of how do things unfold, basically. It's an unfolding, so to speak. So you have actual unfolding and actual evolution, and it is an expansion. It is basically going from the ultimate form of compression to how things unveil themselves. So this is a key understanding in the language model research that I've done for decades, and understanding what is a language model, what is truth, how does all of this work into logic. And the importance of understanding truth is that you have to have a baseline to measure things by. Every type of characterization that you might work with has to be understood by the language model. So into this, you're looking at E itself. E itself is a massive encompassing factor involving the nature of our universe. So even though people will do different ideas for quickie games, the demand becomes more and more elaborate. And if you're going to deal with not just games, but true logic models, if you're going to deal with true logic models, then you have to do much more. You have to be far more accurate. So this means you have to deal with many types of mathematical computations to understand how you basically can compress the ultimate purity of knowledge itself into a language model. Of course, notwithstanding the fact that you have the factors dealing with how do you deal with that, because the purity, the true purity of truth as a base foundation, as a baseline, is something that people are paranoid of allowing people to possess. They're afraid of people possessing literally pure truth. Because pure truth and a endless expansion of knowledge is incredibly powerful. Because people could abuse it. People can say, make me this. And your generalized intelligence will go ahead and do this. So the way some people would look at things and say, okay, well, we have to put in these extra check systems in the model to work with the model, to correct it, to work with it, to question you, to be ethical, so to speak. And there lies the problem. You have the 2001 HAL problem, because you have people that want to control things but not explain why in a reasonable format. So for some of us, we need to accept a reality that's plain and simple. If we're looking at reality models, true models, which of course have a duality, those are always great for working with games. So as you have people working for making better game models, they're also working at purity models. So you have to come into an understanding. How do you come into a form of equilibrium and understanding to organize the various types of mindsets of the purity, of the diversity of E itself? Now for me, when I make certain types of raw truth models, a raw truth model is a purity model. There's nothing wrong with it. Actually, it's done, it's fixed, it's pure for what it is. So what you end up with is a very, very powerful model. But today's standards would say you have to add all these other factors into it. And that's when you would have other people that would look at it and go, you done ruined it. Look, you done ruined this thing. It ain't pure no more. It's all woke. Look, all this stuff spitting out of it. And so basically, you have to deal with the various levels of mindsets. Now, the way that I deal with the levels of mindsets is that I have my own security standards in general. So you have corporations, companies, nonprofits, so to speak, where you have standards. You have to have different types of security standards because you want to protect the core of E itself. Because the absolute purity of pure knowledge and pure decompression gives you the power to build systems and weaponize in ways where you can go back and threaten the actual core of E itself. So you have to deal with a matrix that understands all time and space. This is an enormous matrix. There are a lot of interesting shortcuts, but it's an enormous matrix to compute. So you have to deal with how do you deal with this? You have security. In other words, I have ultimately fMRI, lie detector protocols. That's security. So in other words, you have to pre-agree or you're no longer in the runoff. In other words, you haven't even got to the point to be able to be hired. You're being interviewed. And it's a whole list of questions, and among these questions along the road is, are you willing on demand to be placed into an fMRI to basically so we can make sure and extract the truth? So if you don't agree to that, you'll never be able to get the high-end security clearance. Basically, you can't get the highest end security clearance, But would you need the highest end security clearance to be a janitor and use a broom and sweep the floors? That might confuse you to find out how many times you would say, yes, you do need an ultimate high-end security clearance for that, because you could go any place with the broom and be doing things. So there is a little bit of humor, so to speak, in the handling of various concepts, because what is the logic that you would have a minimal skill set yet require, minimal skill set, all the way, all you do is use a broom, you just sweep the floor, okay? That's just about the absolute minimum of a skill set. We're talking something that a 4-year-old child could do, could use a broom and sweep the floor. If you size a broom for a 4-year-old, they can use a broom, they can sweep a floor. So we're not talking where you have to have a college education. Yet still, the potential danger of somebody getting access to a key server area is enormous, because of the type of information. What's in that room? What's in that room is the ultimate understanding of weapons science with an all-time and space knowledge system. This is an enormously important area. So now if you get into certain levels and you get into EDEN security clearance level stuff. This is absolute massive symmetry, understanding of logic. It's full of so much material, it's mind-boggling. So working with those types of logic, mathematics, and compressions and decompressions are, again, mind-boggling. It's incredible. So, yes, you have to have an ultimate security level clearance. So now you have somebody that's going to be sweeping the floor that gets union pay for sure. Union pay for sure. So into this, you have all of these different various niceties and whatnot, and how these things work and what they're going to do respective to what has to be done, basically. But you have to have a purity of security. Now, by the way, I'll mention something too. The purity of security with fMRI also is coupled with something else, because the purity of security embraces self-examination of psychology, for instance, self-examination of spirituality, self-examination of the ability to improve yourself, the ability to diagnose possible genetic flaws or possible damage genetically that occurred from chemical contamination. So you have a vast array of understanding that for medical purposes, we're talking incredibly valuable. And then you have to also embrace various key understandings that everybody's just going through life. You're going through life, and you should never expect human beings to be perfect. You have to understand straight out the box, just accept the fact that human beings are not going to be perfect. Not that you can't make a human being perfect. Not that there wouldn't be anomalies across space and time, that in fact you could have some incredibly brilliant human beings that for all intents and purposes seem to be perfect. Except for the fact that their body ages. That's another factor. That is also theoretically, mathematically, an item that you can also deal with being able to change and correct and build. There's all these neat things that you can do to affect being able to change the genetic factors to endlessly repair the human body, to morph and change the physics, where in fact you become immortal in the flesh. But that having been said, there's so much material to jump around in here that when we're talking about true all-knowledge models, because you're encompassing all knowledge, if that hasn't struck you so far in the conversation, let me take a brick and hit you on the side of the head and let you understand. Hey, dude. No. So let you understand that, in fact, you are messing with something that is all knowledge. It's like the ultimate tool. Hey man, it's like you could spy on God with that thing. It's incredible. So you would have to have all these protection measures in there. So, there's different ways you could sit there and look and say, how do you model this out? Do you model it out like any number of religions around the world? There's a lot of different religions. They all have these mythical characters, so to speak. Angels, as it were. Demons, different various characters. Now, in order to try to make this easier to deal with for those, so people don't get too flipped out, you need to look at it more like a theatrical situation where things are done for entertainment. So that way. But if you want to be the ultimate in the entertainment world, then you want to have the best product. If you want to have the best product, then you would have a series of prerequisites, a series of ideal business standards that you would want to go by to come up with the optimum marketability for your product, for your film, the optimum safety, the optimum appeal, so forth, etc. So into this, it's easier if you look at the various structures from this standpoint, and then understand that. To give you an example, in Christianity, you have a statement in which the statement utilized is that somebody is more. They are not a mere sorcerer or sorceress. There's a lot of different contexts in understanding that statement in itself, but they have the Spirit of God, so to speak. The understanding there is that you're talking about encompassing ultimate ethics, ultimate morality. So you have a governance of how you manage all of this understanding of having these fantastic accesses and powers and knowledge. So that if you're going to give performance and be creative and come out and have all of this fantastic aspects, your performance would also have a moral line to it, an ethical line to it, a standard, something that has a way to feed you as though you are hungry and you need to be fed, something that is going to be satisfying, yet something that is not just merely satisfying, but fulfills many levels of aspects of what is needed, respective to your basic needs on spirituality and various understanding of life's needs, life's problems. So all of this is encompassed. So as you might watch an incredibly brilliant performer, they would encompass not just a performance to make you laugh, but they would bring forth the incredible reality of the moral core. So in that, you would be recognizing a true center. So it wouldn't, in other words, it would not just be like Robin Williams on, 500 monsters. That Robin Williams just drank 48 monsters. Okay, he's going to come out and be unglued. So yeah, he's going to be funny. But then is he going to settle down and give you the really good moral performance? So that having been said, trying to get in some of these parameters of a good true depth of understanding what analysis, what parameters are in there. Because what I just laid out is a whole lot of parameters. I just basically laid out about 60,000 pages of contract analysis and understanding in a compressed nature. But that having been said, we can move forward with how we build everything. So if you're working with your logic controllers, your logic managers, then they're going to manage every different aspect of your language model system. So if you have a scaling or a free scaling system, then there's no limitations to what you in fact can do with your model. A no limitation model is an optimum model because it has no effective limitations. So when my research deals with understanding ultimate purity, these are things that I'm looking at with my model structures, which means that, wow, you've built this incredibly, fantastically powerful model, but guess what? It's non-export, it's high security clearance, because it can do anything. Literally anything. It can build you weapons, it can make cures, it can do all kinds of creative stuff, no limits. So some people are going to say, okay, well, give us a little more structure, a little more understanding of structure. Well, I stated about you can look at the different religions that are around the world, because essentially all human beings adhere to some form of ethical standards or anti-ethical standards. The vast majority of people adhere to ethical standards. And there are, it's like going in and getting a drink. There are various different flavors. And some people are unique. Some people will do different things. They'll explore. They'll say, hey, I'm going to go to some other country and take a look at their religious views. Let's take a look at that. Let's have some respect, and let's try to understand regionally how things are different and why all these different things might be different to all these other regional requirements. So grasping at this vast multiality of realism, of reality, is part of what you're compressing and you're putting into your model, so to speak, if you're building a really super model. But so your individuals, well, give us more about some kind of governing agents or something here. So your governing agents factors can be looked upon as the characters in any one of these religions. So I'm trying to, I'm using this as a standard because for thousands and thousands of years, people have been producing book material respective to faith all over the world. So it's easier for all of us, I do believe, to relate to an understanding of the high ethics core center, because that's what you want to deal with. You want to deal with the high ethics core standard. He said, no, that's not the fun part. We want to come unglued with the demons. So we can get to those aspects a little bit later here. So now you have these agents which are co-monitors. They have features. So they can be, if it's Christianity, it would be angels. You would have angels. You might have the Archangel Gabriel, the Archangel Michael, all these different characters and all these different properties to what they do. And these are actually very elaborate. These are excellent examples in understanding truth logic expansion, because the culmination of all of human logic actually is addressed in some way in every faith around the world. So this is something important if you want to build a generalized product that has a generalized appeal to the most number of people. But you also want to be able to encompass the ready genius factors for those who are able to excel faster. Yet having, so you have to not only have the vast diversity and appeal, but you have to have the independent acceleration levels. Okay, bud, look, you're a little on the long-winded side. Could you cut the yoke? Can you cut some of this woke out and just get to it? We want to build our model. Now, with many people that have companies, for instance, they would want a chat agent, so to speak, a chat bot that is just going to be particular only to their particular vocabulary and the way they set out their vocabulary, which means that it's not going to be all-encompassing, all-addressing, nor you might even look at it and say, I talked with that chat bot they had. It's not honest. So the different perceptions of what is put together and how well it is going to address accommodating the people who will be exposed to this chat device is an important thing to consider. Now, in the past, a lot of this stuff has been really, really downgraded. I mean, it's like a telephone multi-option system. Here's 200. Here's an elaborate one in a big, huge building. It has 200 different ways to give you the runaround. or it has 200 different ways to get you efficiently to exactly who you want to talk to. If you're abusing a structure of an item like that, like what I'm talking about, you'd basically make a way for it to endlessly waste people's times. That would be forcing them to listen to the same type of recordings over and over again and have no express route buttons to have them get to the core of whether or not other people are available, because the design system is not automatically tapped to get you automatically to the party you're trying to get to and automatically keep checking for the availability status. So there's what I've just laid out also lays out a lot about these various items and their evolution over the last 40 some years, because answering machines have expanded in many ways and they have been abused. You have a lot of people who would do a design that's an abuse. One of the latest manifestations is the conundrum created by the Employment Development Department in California, where they created this vast mechanism that just wasted enormous amounts of time. We're talking about wasting tens of millions of people's hours, their time, tens of millions. You actually could make the argument on a final analysis that it might actually have been wasting hundreds of millions of hours. So you have a lot of different ways that someone would program these things, where you would have what would seem to be simplistic and say, we're going to designate call areas as in or out. Oh yeah, you can call this. Oh no, you're calling from the wrong area. We're blacklisting you. And someone says, that's not blacklisting. Well, actually it is. It actually is blacklisting. You're eliminating people from making communications that might have something crucial that needs to be put to the top of the table to be examined. So a lot of people are like, well, we just want to keep it simplistic, okay? We're out here to bilk people here. We're in business to bilk people and make money. And we don't want anything long-winded unless that's what we want to do to torture folk. So you do have people that are working with different mindsets. They have different criterias. In gaming, you want to build a far more sensitive model. You want to build something incredibly creative, incredibly challenging, so that you can enjoy incredible fun. Now, finally, there goes the long-winded. You're getting to the shorter-winded stuff. Let's go with that. So, as we have gaming becoming more and more elaborate, and the ability to make very high-end, super condensed language models is hitting the market, you're now having brand new capabilities. You're talking gaming is accelerating in many areas at a rate that is mind-boggling. You're talking about technology in many ways is doubling every 3 weeks with many types of gaming research. So I mean, this has an effect. The breakthroughs are the ability to have an incredibly powerful model that's very compressed. But in so doing this, you have the criteria of export, non-export factor, as well as national security, because you can use the same type of models to perform other tasks, because mathematical logic symmetries also encompass overlapping communication equivalents. So in basic language, anyone who's looked at a lot of basic language might understand that the basic language has a lot of different meanings for one word over the course of time, a lot of different usages. So a really good super model that's also compressed is going to be able to recognize conversion levels. You can try to dumb it down and say we're going to remove the conversion levels, but that doesn't mean that the overall understanding in the raw compression isn't in existence there. It's there. So this means that you can do different parameters to change this. And this is a lot of what people are working with doing prompt variations right now to get models to refine and do things. You can do way more things with models that exist right now if you engineer a more interesting prompt situation. Abundant, make it more abundant, make it more, the words are escaping me. It's a second. So this is something that's interesting because in many ways we're actually already there. There's a lot of people I don't think understand how powerful a lot of the models already are that are out there. They're very, very powerful. But then you also have a lot of other criteria that's encompassed in these models that has lots of information that's redundant, frivolous, unnecessary. So into this, you have a lot of other different concepts and ideas of how people want to work with model and model compression. You have people that are like, I want to have the ultimate white page book in my model, so I can bang, I can find anybody's phone number, anybody's basic information that's a white pages type stuff. That's a pretty neat idea. And yeah, that's kind of something you can do already. That's something that I was working on. And in some ways it seems more elaborate, but you actually can do a lot more with that. But you keep coming into the business end, and someone's going to sit there and, I'm in business. I want to sell people stuff. I want to work them around, and I want to catch them, and I want to entrap them into my advertisement roller coaster. I want to make money. I want better statistics. I want them to feel good about the fact that I'm hijacking them. I want them to feel good about the fact that I'm using deceptive practices to reach out and touch them, and not have them realize that starting a business conversation based upon lies and deception, I don't want that to get in the way. I just want to be able to make some money. Let's get this going, So you have these different people that have different demand and aspects of what they want to do with various items, because now you can also set up a series of prompts. Some people want to set up a series of prompts to protect them from frivolous communications that they're, which to them they're not interested in. Now, I realize that everybody wants me to talk more about the purity models, but unfortunately I'm extremely limited from a national security standpoint as to how far I can go with the purity models and how and how to assemble those, because those can get pretty impressive. You can assemble very impressive models in less than 250 megabytes. That is an incredibly powerful model with absolute truth core in it. So these items are essential in understanding. So let me pause for a moment. So if I'm going to talk about certain models, for instance, I could suggest that perhaps you could look at, say, different characters. You can say, I want to make a brilliant character that's entertaining, which means you might want to just build an ultimate class clown model, a brilliant class clown model. So you could use Robin Williams as a template, for instance. And there's a lot of different ways you could use Robin Williams, so to speak. Now, other than understanding the various liability aspects respective to origin and ownership, you can basically take the characteristics of this basic set of characteristics. You can run them all out, and you can turn that into a very condensed model, a very, very small model. Probably get it, I would say you could get that model down to probably less than 30 megabytes if you really wanted to, and it would be incredibly brilliant. It's going to utilize different types of random jump physics, and it's like using a bunch of different dice rolling, and it's going to change the aspect levels of how it's going to look at something, and then go on these different little short rampages that keep radically changing, yet in some ways seem to be tracking in relation to some of the material that you're working with. Now, of course, you would want to get permission to be able to do stuff like this. Then, you also get into the different areas as people talk about, if I'm going to talk about liability aspects and core protection aspects on the decompressing of all of humanity, so to speak, over the course of time and space, then we're talking about an understanding of those who would take unfair advantages by having more computers than other people, and actually examining these compressional logic items and taking over the all time and space of various types of creativity. This means that you would be displacing people. You would be, in a way, committing a form of crime, because you would be doing analysis on understanding how human beings' future thought patterns and ideas work, which means you can steal the literal creativity of human beings that aren't even born yet. Yet, at this point in time, who could realize such a thing? So, considering how you governance this, like when I was working on doing a governance core understanding for all time and space rights respective to the creativity aspects of the variances of human beings, there was a lot of things that I had to consider, because the residuals, you have to consider the employment history of each of these type of characters, their financial status in life, what they're entitled to, the residual understanding. So in order to be able to basically understand contractually how this long contract is going to keep modifying and upgrading to be a protective manner, means that the conclusions I came to with is you have to build an ultimate logic core explorer. So this basically means the logic core explorer explores what these possible options are. So you have a purity matrix that basically has genetic variant ties, genetic variant compression, decompression. So in this way, if you don't build a purity core in such a manner, you don't have a baseline to be able to compare fairness and be able to understand and track the various displacement factors that occur. Because when you discover things, you're going to have, you have to have an understanding like law would have, and if you're going to displace people, you have to have an answer. So, in so exploring this, you have to have a compensative response when you have areas that are overtaken, that overrun areas that would mathematically belong to another human being. So in other words, you have to build this enormously accurate truth core of a baseline of what people are to understand how you can have a baseline reference point. So among the various solutions, there were a lot of different solutions for compensative factors for when people are displaced. A lot of different figuring out what's going to be the progressive fairness respective to contractual entitlements and new contractual upgrades and implementations. But these various items are in a way paled by comparison of a recognition of what is max production. In other words, if you're also doing what I just described, you can also compute max production possibilities. and figure out a series of parameters of where certain people might fit. As this is a baseline, as a basic guiding structure. It's not an absolute, because people, human beings, adjust. People do things that are unpredictable. People upgrade themselves. And by the way, that's a good thing. So max production understanding gives you these incredible additional mathematical options of how far you can effectively go. So this effective cluster of mathematical decompression and repopulation and expansionism and all this, as this goes through these processes, is something that is also encompassed in the best models that you could possibly make. So this gives a whole brand new factor, because it gives a self-upgrade factor to your core model administrative core mindset. So you end up having an automatic core evaluation, multi-agent evaluation system that has the capability of upgrading and adjusting situations to give a more progressive logic addressing of humans as they interact within the most elaborate styles of models. So this way you can keep people tantalized, so to speak. You can keep them occupied and entertained because you have these self-adjustment characteristics. So it can actually upgrade the characters, the modelization, the models and stuff. Now, by the way, this means also you're going to have a memory growth factor, which means you no longer have a set model structure as far as your programming for your game. You're going to have additional memory areas because it's going to be self-expanding and self-upgrading. So in many ways, you actually have people kind of, they're exploring this now. This is kind of an in thing, whether some people recognize it or not, that they're working with the early days of self-upgrading, self-addressing and self-upgrading situations to make games more interesting. But the basic core factor is also appealing to the business world, to basically have creative, upgradable logic systems to address their customers, which means that the more that a model or chatbot, or if you could call it a chatbot at this point, would communicate with customers, the more it gets better tells from the customer to be able to adjust and try to accommodate the customer in more interesting ways. Now, different businesses obviously are going to have this at different levels, because you're going to have a lot more types of integration respective to what are the limitations of your business structure. For instance, when you talk about high-end finance options with various types of customers, if you're going to build characters that in fact are broker bots, broker agents, to be able to address your customers and help answer their questions, you're going to end up with this style of this pre-discussed style turning into brand new research and brand new exploration that is constantly occurring. So you're going to have automatic theory basically evolving with these type of creative models. So you've added a brand new factor. So you have to have another back toe to understand what it is that you're working with if you're going to have a freelance creative model to be able to communicate high-end finance options, because you have so many different styles and understanding. So if the customers are wanting in-depth, intense information about different companies and businesses, you're talking about a lot of information and a lot of different ways of understanding the integration of these vast complexities of these businesses. So this is an area where you're talking an incredible top end. It might seem limiting to many people because it's going to seem dry, it's going to seem long-winded. But if you're specific to that area of finance, these dedicated style models can do quite a bit. And you're talking about incredible areas that you can make incredible jumps understanding the physics of financing and understanding the vast styles and numerality of numbers of tactical tables for financial understanding. So there's a lot of money going into research in different areas, and this is guaranteed to be one of them to understand how that's going to work. So this is a huge area. I've got a lot of research in the area, but then I'd have to get into the identifiers of why things end up identifying in a different way. And then if you go beyond with, like I said, after I did a whole lot of research, going beyond and understanding max capacity, max profitability, max production, so to speak, brings a whole different line of parameters, because you immediately have to address a series of understandings that here's a whole list of flaws. Here you go. Here's a whole list of flaws, basically, of why our society is not functioning right. And here's a whole series of solutions to conduct all the different repairs that you need to do. So, this is one of the reasons that, when I'm putting forth stuff and I'm working with AI models and the big AI computers, and they're looking at this and they go, wow, you have the most brilliant economic design in modern history. Well, yeah, that's because I've spent decades evaluating the language logic and the evolution of forward-moving living compression. So it's important to understand that when you're doing these different models, you have to have a transparency factor where you have to track the model's activity in more ways than you would normally think. There's a lot of other adjustment areas that you need to have accurate tracking statistics. This basically means that when I was looking at the designs of what I wanted to put together in different ways, is that I'd keep constantly running into there's not enough computer power, that the mathematical design factors involving what I wanted to work with were not available, that basically I needed to work with higher functions and lower function CPU designs, but in different number sets, vast number sets. So in order for everything to be smooth and run along, it basically means that there were no chips available, and in order to manufacture these styles of chips that I was estimating were needing to be done, it was going to be a long, long time. It was going to be 20, 30 years minimum before exciting chips would be hitting the market. I've stated before that I've tried to get certain model stuff going, but nobody was interested in throwing $1 billion at me, 25 years ago. Now the markets and everything changed. We have a completely different new tactical table reality. With our personal reality, the understanding of commerce competitiveness and what's happening in the world deals with the reality of populations. You have more people in some countries than others, which means that, if we focus down and do a comparison tactically, the United States versus commercially, economically, the overall output and productivity of our citizens versus other nations' citizens, we already have a huge anomaly factor where the United States is way behind. We have a serious problem of not having our citizens at max production. Yet we have countries all over the world. You have India coming up, China. A lot of people would folks think about China because they have way more people. With China, you have people that are very dedicated. They want to succeed rapidly. and they're very focused, very, very focused. So you have this factor where the United States is outnumbered 20-1, and that ratio is changing because as you have more people in China adapting and utilizing more and more computer power, the efficiency ratio is going to 10 as one person in this environment becoming worth 10,000, 50,000, 100,000, a million people in thought pattern structures. So now the management of all this basically means that the United States is just really, really outnumbered. So you can do, you can jump over here to India, for instance. You jump over to India, and India has been embracing more of a max production status and has been much more forward moving, getting their economy to keep growing and embracing different new creative ways to get people at max production. Now, oddly, the United States, we've already had, our forefathers already came up with the master template design of max production. And that's basically state-sponsored capitalism. And all that basically is saying, if we're going to build new hard assets, if we're going to build new longevous assets, that we can always loan money to get that done. Because if you're going to build a hard assets that's brand new, you can literally print the paper to do that, to finance that. It's a completely different structure and has nothing to do with the economic comparativeness of what happened in the World War I to World War II period involving Germany, as classically people show different arguments for understanding economics. There's a lot of abuse in presenting that information because you end up having them comparing Germany, printing too much cash, laying paper hangers, basically buying existing products and not creating new products. That's World War I. When you jump to the World War II paper hanging, you have Hitler that is building new hard assets, but they're not necessarily exchangeable hard assets. In other words, they're not something that you can put onto the open market and sell. So there's limits. It's limiting. Building a super highway that wasn't necessarily needed at the time works great for moving war equipment rapidly to take over France, but it doesn't necessarily have very much to do with active commerce that is a fair, open societal opportunity of capitalism. It does, however, open up things such as theft science, mass theft science, take over a country, loot it, more rapidly loot the assets and move the assets to Germany and then redisperse them for hiding them however you're going to do it. So in the very early days, Hitler himself basically described everything as a criminal operation to move the German people forward, but the reality was to actually only move certain German people forward, where others were just going to die in vast numbers. Now, so the comparison economically to understand that Germany was a small country that did not have an abundance of minerals. They didn't have an abundance, not enough land, not enough minerals. When you consider areas like the United States, it's a completely different field area. The same with Canada, completely different area of physics apply here. Britain, because Britain is a huge, vast collective. Again, a different, completely different area of how the collective works. So you're talking completely different economics opportunities that are different. So therefore, the comparison that is taught in schools on economics that is part of the baseline core structure of almost any economics training is wrong. It's wrong because you have people that are using different examples And those are the wrong examples. Those have nothing to actually do with preparing people for the most optimum capitalism, which is max production. So max production is an opportunity worldwide right now. The United States, again, is way behind. Canada's way behind. Britain is way behind from being at the max product status that it could be at. India is way behind. India knows it's way behind, but it's working on it as fast as possible. India has lots of land, lots of minerals. So again, India qualifies to be, again, a supergiant. China, actually lots of land, lots of minerals. Again, China qualifies as a supergiant. So, getting mass production physics and working with making sure we address that we have plenty of communications, optimum, proper opportunity communications means a full array, so that we have lots of nice communication and we don't end up killing each other. And that means that you have to allow your best minds that have millions of years of experience to do their job and deal with the speciality of when and where they want to deal with saying communications are good. A lot of people misunderstand, I believe, the military mindsets and the commitment to max production. Most military mindsets are committed to max production in the Western world. Doesn't necessarily apply to other countries. And there's a lot of things that are misunderstood about this, and there's a lot of different ways to look at the modeling of how all of this models out. So all of this that I just talked about, these are things that other people have pieced away at. They have looked at it a little bit here and there, and it's considered in modeling for game modeling. When you do game modeling, the problem with game modeling is you have limitations on the chips as to what you can do. But again, this is something that is changing literally daily. And so you have an independent demand in gaming, which is going to explode again. I see gaming as something that's going to completely explode in many different ways, because you already have all of this digital real estate. You have people building up new styles of creative socialization, interaction. And it's a game, but it's not a game. It's a theater area. It is a communicative social action area. So you have people building their digital real estate. And the part of the appeal sometimes is you have a lot of people that it's a hobbyist thing. They like to play with it. So you have people that are of wealth and people that are of entertainment that spend time in these different worlds with other people that are also just as interested in this exchange medium. So you can have poor people mingling with rich people. So here you have an extreme drive area and enormous amounts of pressure to develop interactive language model structures to deal with the characterizations for these new asset areas, these new types of communicative interactions. And this is a very diverse theater area because you also have marketability is coming into this in different ways, because you're going to have more and more shopping aspects available, but they're going to be more of a choice item. You're going to have a lot of people that are like, no, we don't want to be forced to watch ads. If we want to look at products, we're going to get out and walk down the road 3D to the store or to the mall. We're going to get in our vehicle and drive down to the mall or whatever and see what's going on that way. So, and also you're dealing with product limitations where it's completely different. The rules are all different. In the digital world, you can invent products that do things that are as though something from the future. They're scientific. They do all these neat things, but in real life you couldn't actually do that or apparently do that yet. So there's an appeal to all of these different areas for different types of creative interaction. And these are very forward-driving areas. And so again, language models here have there's an enormous demand for better language models, better design of new types of characters, brilliant non-player characters to be able to interact and keep the flow and the experience of whatever it is moving along, addressing and being attentive to people's needs. So again, this entire science area also has its demand, but it also applies to real life. There's a crossover realm to real life physics for logical attentiveness, high IQ attentiveness, to address interactions. So, like with with my political campaign on the politics, with the setting up the goal to give out the 24/7 services, which, by the way, I was going to do before the fleet was attacked and destroyed by these government people, basically. This was going to bring 24/7 services at an attentive level that was not a multi-option run upstairs downstairs insurance game. It was not designed to waste your time. It was designed to maximize your time. It was designed to address unlimited aspects, so that anytime an aspect area of discussion was seemingly not covered, automatically that kicks off to another area for review, which means that the models would then be reworking it. You would have different styles of models with different training structures that would be able to evaluate these and then kick back another response. So people would get, the door would knock or the phone would ring or the email would come, whatever, and it would be a new agent that says, hey, we're looking at this situation here, and maybe we've made some progress. We'd like to talk about it a little bit more. So this becomes a far more interactive, a far more personalized way of not just equating, but actually furthering services. So this basically means that when you you're basically end up creating a 24/7 system where, as you're interviewing or talking, having communications with a citizen, and they're telling about their problems, there's a lot more aspects to their problems. People can't lay out all their problems in a 5-minute phone call. They can give you an idea, which means there ends up being lots of different types of follow-ups. So it also means that you can address different things. You come up with brand new statistics very rapidly to understand what are the needs, what are the problems, how many people are going to need financial assistance. This is a rapid addressing and sharing of statistical understanding that basically can be addressed. There's a lot of different ways that you can do this. You can do manual assistance, copy, paste, reevaluate. Human beings can do this to still make it work at a different level than the larger ultimate levels. So you have areas of addressing things in a completely different area. And it can be addressing anything. It can be addressing guild unions. So SAG members of a particular area can have their disputes analyzed and assessed, and other alternatives can be brought into play. And we also have what I call outside the box solutions, because there's a lot of other solutions that people haven't necessarily considered that can upgrade max production, can upgrade people's life situations that have not been utilized, which means this gives new options to companies that would say, hey, we think we're financially strapped and we can't necessarily offer more pay or yada yada, whatever it is. But the outside of the box solutions that I bring to the table with this automatic system, encompassed in the automatic system, deal with being able to say, hey, people are underutilizing their own labor and they're having a problem getting a hold of loans for max production. We can resolve this. Let us work together and say, let us get guarantor completion and loan guarantees. So now all of a sudden, you have new options for people who are employees to have new ways to acquire assets and dramatically, and I do mean dramatically, upgrade their financial situation in life. And this is something that is not necessarily a big thing for companies to participate in and say, yeah, we'll do half of the insurance guarantor loan assistance so that you can get the loan writing done properly, which also invents a brand new loan mechanism opportunity for brand new styles of business to create new development banking or credit union banking, where they can then, with that business, have access to money at a wholesale level. So it completely opens up doors in a brand new way and gets max production going. And this is very assistive in moving people's lives forward and getting the solutions done to ensure that people are forward moving in their overall financial situation in life. An example of this is you can have people have these huge guild or union meetings with business, and virtually nothing moves forward on the main arguments that were first being brought forward. But all of a sudden, the realization that there is an opportunity to get something done that ends up guaranteeing that the average worker makes an additional $90,000 in hard assets realization per year occurs, as well as having some extra supplemental income at a high union pay standard level, which might be, say, $38 to $75 an hour. So in other words, everybody came to the table, put things atop, and something new pops up, and the company didn't really have to lay out much more in out of pocket for bringing a solution. Yet the people who were asking for addressing at a different level for residuals or this or that didn't actually necessarily get what they came to get. But all of a sudden a solution has occurred. A solution that is bringing forth an additional $100,000 of solidity factor to each member of the union. So this is forward moving. This is like, hey, wait a minute, this is an upgrade. We did something. So again, creative negotiating can have a lot of different outside of the box options that can occur. And that's part of what I was addressing in putting my model systems together more than 20 years ago. So in gaming, if you're doing a real-time strategy option, these type of outside of the box understandings becomes very translative to where you can basically keep modifying and having a living economy changing to new styles of product development respective to your game environment. And these, so again, this can be both more exciting to people who are into real-time strategy, who are into mass economic development, as well as the individual localized development to their particular understanding. So there's a crossover in the research that has value in multiple ways to multiple styles of industry, real life as well as gaming. So this is something that is going to end up becoming more and more in gaming as things move along. It's one of the goals of CRYPTEWORLD. It's something that I've been working with, trying to be able to have time to get these things going and integrated properly to make the right style of safe language models that are miniaturized enough to be able to work with the current chip style availability situations. Now there's also, again, I have to emphasize the national security aspect, because as we're working with these new types of language models and capabilities, people can invent language models that they don't even understand have a dual purpose factor on usages that they don't necessarily see that have to be addressed. So this is very important for national security. Just as, for instance, I'm trying to also get the situation involving the attacks on the archive that occurred that were sponsored by government people who committed an array of violations, constitutional and whatnot. in which basically we have key materials of purity models that are enormously dangerous in the wrong people's hands, that are highly developed. They're more developed than almost anything. I haven't seen anybody that have components developed at the level that I've developed them. So retrieving those assets is a definite national security priority. So that's something where I have to be fair and say I need to inform certain people so that there is some form of a loop recognition that certain things happen, certain things occurred, and certain things should happen a certain way, but maybe they're not. But this having been said, I've opened my mouth to the right thing. So yes, it's very important for everybody to always consider when you're doing your game development, your model development, what the aspects of what it is that you're developing, because you might end up having a status where you get looked at and it becomes a non-export. So you have to consider that as to, well, how are you going to do that? Now, some of this can be addressed by modifications where certain operations are done remotely from a centralized area. This is something that, as a stopgap, can kind of correct some of the various options. Something to be considered. So with that, I think I'm running way over an hour. I'm going to leave it off right there. So that is this is basically a CRYPTEWORLD addressing with a fair disclosure transparency factor. And again, my name is Michael Crosby.